At 2:13 in the morning, Tower 8 checked in. That alone would not have shaken me. Towers check in every night. That is the whole job. The problem was that Tower 8 had burned to the ground 6 years before, in the Crow Ridge fire, and there was nothing left up on that ridge but blackened metal legs and a concrete pad. The stairs were gone. The cab was gone. The radio gear had melted or been hauled out years ago. The power line to it was cut and capped. Every map in the district, every duty roster, every dispatch sheet marked that ridge as closed and inactive. No one was assigned there. No one could be assigned there, because there was no longer any there to stand in. And at 2:13 in the morning, a calm voice came over the district radio and said, "Dispatch, Tower 8, radio check, no visible smoke." I have spent 2 seasons trying to decide how to tell this. I keep starting and stopping. I am not a writer. I am a fire lookout, and before that, I was a guy who couldn't sit still in an office, and the lookout job suited me, because it is mostly quiet, and mostly alone, and you only really matter a few times a season. When you catch a smoke early, and your call saves somebody a bad week. I like the work. I am telling you that up front, so you understand, I am not the kind of man who goes looking for ghost stories. I went looking for explanations. I found them, one after another, and one after another, they came apart in my hands. So now, I am just going to lay it out the way it happened, in order, the way I would write up an incident, and you can make of it what you want. Let me set the scene first, because if you have never sat a lookout shift at night, you won't feel the weight of that first call. I work a tower in a remote district in western Montana. I'm not going to name the exact district, and you'll understand why by the end. It's high, dry pine country, ridges running north and south, deep timbered drainages between them, old logging roads that the Forest Service gated and let go back to brush. In the summer, the days are hot and bright, and you watch the horizon for the first thread of smoke. At night, mostly, you just hold the radio and wait. There are still a handful of staffed lookouts in the district, and we each have a number, and we run on the district net, the shared radio channel that ties the whole place together. My tower is a little glass room on top of a tall set of stairs, maybe 40 feet up, with windows on all 4 sides, and a railed catwalk going around the outside. Inside there's a stool, a small bunk, a propane burner, a weather station, and in the middle of the floor a thing called a fire finder. It's a round metal table with a map of the district fixed to it, and a ring around the edge marked off in degrees, and a sighting piece you turn to line up on smoke. You spot a column of smoke. You turn the sight until the crosshairs sit on it, and you read the bearing off the ring. If another tower sees the same smoke and calls their bearing, dispatch crosses the 2 lines on the master map, and where they cross is your fire. 2 lines and a crossing point. That's the whole science of it, and it's a good system. Simple, and old, and reliable. At night, the tower creaks. The wind comes up off the ridges, and the guy wires hum a low note, and the whole structure shifts a little, and you get used to it, the way you get used to a house. You learn which stair is loose. You learn that the propane takes 2 tries to light when it's cold. You learn the voices on the net the way you learn family, even the ones you've never met in person, because for 4 months out of the year, those voices are the only company you have between dark and dawn. So I knew every voice that should have been on that channel. There were 5 staff towers that season, including mine. Tower 2, Tower 4, Tower 6, Tower 7, and me, Tower 3. 5 towers, 5 voices, plus the dispatcher down at the district office. The night it started was an ordinary night. Clear, cool, a little wind. There had been some dry lightning 2 days before, way off to the south, and we were all watching our sectors for holdover smokes, the kind of fire that smolders in a snag for a couple of days after a strike and then wakes up. So everyone was a little more alert than usual. The dispatcher that night was a woman named Carla, who had run the desk for years and had the kind of flat, steady radio voice that never changed, no matter what was happening. Bear attack or a quiet Tuesday, Carla sounded exactly the same. I liked working with her. Nothing rattled her. A little after 2 in the morning, she ran a radio check. That's routine on a night when you're watching for holdovers. She wants to make sure everyone's awake and the channel's clean. She called the towers in order. Tower 2, dispatch, radio check. Tower 2, loud and clear. Tower 4, dispatch. 4's clear. She came to me. Tower 3, dispatch, radio check. Tower 3, loud and clear, I said. Tower 6, 6, clear. Tower 7, 7, good. And that should have been it. 5 towers, 5 answers, done. I was already reaching to turn the volume down a notch and settle back on the stool. Then the channel opened again. The little squelch broke, that soft click and hiss you hear right before someone talks, and a man's voice came on, calm and even, with the slightly bored tone of somebody reading off a routine line he's said 1,000 times. Dispatch, 4-8, dispatch, Tower 8, radio check, no visible smoke. I want to tell you exactly what I felt, and the honest answer is that for about 3 seconds, I felt nothing at all. My brain just refused it. It was like hearing your own name called in a town where nobody knows you. The words didn't connect to anything. Tower 8. There hadn't been a Tower 8 on the net in 6 years. Then the cold came, all at once, down my arms. The channel was dead quiet. I could picture every other lookout doing exactly what I was doing, sitting up, looking at their radio. 5 of us, plus Carla, all hearing the same thing. Carla's voice came back, and for the first time in the 2 seasons I'd worked with her, there was a hairline crack in it. Just a small hesitation before she spoke. Unit calling dispatch. Say again your call sign. The squelch broke. The same calm voice. Dispatch. Tower 8. Radio check. No visible smoke in my sector. Wind light out of the southwest. And that last part is what put the floor under it for me. Wind light out of the southwest, because that was right. That was exactly the wind we had that night. I had logged it myself an hour earlier, off my own weather station. Light, southwest, a prank caller, a recording, some kid who found an old frequency. None of that gives you the current wind on a closed ridge at 2 in the morning. Carla didn't answer right away. The channel hissed. Then she said, carefully, "Station identifying as Tower 8. Be advised that call sign is inactive. Identify your actual unit." Nothing. The squelch stayed closed. The hiss went on and on. We all waited. I counted to 30 in my head, then to 60. Nothing came back. Finally, Carla said, in her flat voice, which had smoothed itself back out, "All units, disregard. Possible interference. Resume normal operations." But nobody said anything for a long time after that. The channel just stayed open and empty, and I sat on my stool in my little glass room 40 feet up in the dark, and I looked out the north window toward where Tower 8 used to be, and there was nothing out there but black ridges and stars. I got up and went to the firefinder and looked at the map under the glass. It's the master map of the whole district, and the old tower sites are still marked on it, even the closed ones, with little symbols. I found Tower 8's mark, up on the ridge to the north of me, on the far side of a deep drainage, maybe 9 air miles away. Next to the symbol, in faded ink, somebody years ago had written a single word, inactive. I stood there with my finger on that word for a while. Then I did what I always do when something happens that I can't fit in my head. I wrote it down. I keep a logbook, a hardbound thing, and I logged it the way I'd log anything. Time, 02:113. Entry, unidentified station using Tower 8 call sign. Checked in on District Net during radio check. Reported correct current weather. Dispatch advised interference. I wrote it in my own small print. Then I sat back down, and I did not sleep the rest of that shift, and I watched that dark ridge to the north until the sky went gray. In the morning I asked about it. I came down off my tower around 9 after the morning check-ins and drove the fire road down to the district office to pick up supplies, which I did every week or so. The office is a low building with a flag out front and a dispatch room in the back and a smell of old coffee and warm paper that I have come to associate with the job. Carla had gone home, but the day dispatcher was there, a younger guy named Owen, and the assistant district fire management officer, a man named Reyes, was in his office with the door open. I told them about the call. Owen had already heard about it, of course, because dispatch shifts overlap, and the strange ones get passed along. He had the easy explanation ready. "Radio bounce," he said. "Skip. You get a temperature inversion at night. The signal bounces off it and travels way farther than it should. Somebody on an old frequency 200 miles away, maybe an old Forest Service handheld somebody never turned in, and it lands right on our channel for a minute. Happens," I said, It knew the wind. Light. Southwest. That was our wind last night. Here. Exactly. Owen shrugged. Lucky guess. Or the same front was moving through a big area. Southwest wind isn't exactly rare. Reyes came out of his office. He's a calm, careful man. The kind who chooses his words. He'd been with the district a long time. He said, "We'll log it as interference. If it happens again, get a recording if you can. The new console records everything, but I want you to note the exact time, too." I asked him, just to ask, was there ever a Tower 8? I mean a real one, where the closed mark is, on the North Ridge. And I watched something move behind his eyes. Just for a second, he said, "Yeah, there was. Burned in the Crow Ridge fire. 6 years back, before your time. We pulled it off the active list after that." And then he changed the subject. Asked me about my water tank, whether I needed propane, the ordinary things. But the way he'd looked when I said the name stayed with me. That afternoon, instead of driving straight back up, I stayed at the office and asked Owen if I could look at the old fire records. I told him I was curious about the Crow Ridge fire. He didn't mind. There's a file room off the dispatch area. Gray cabinets full of carbon copy incident reports going back decades. And the Crow Ridge fire had its own thick folder, the way big fires do. I read it at the table in the file room with the window light going long across the floor. The Crow Ridge fire started from a lightning strike on a dry August night and ran hard for 3 days before they got a line around it. It burned a big chunk of the north end of the district, including the ridge where Tower 8 stood. The report was detailed and dry, the way these things are. Times, acreages, crew assignments, weather. There was an evacuation timeline for the staffed lookouts in the fire's path. Tower 8 was one of them. According to the report, the lookout assigned to Tower 8 that season had evacuated safely down the service road before the fire reached the ridge. The report listed his name. I'll call him Hale, because that was close to it, and because I don't want to put his real name out into the world, for reasons that will make sense later. The report said Hale evacuated. The tower was lost to the fire. No injuries. That was the official version. Clean. Everybody got out. The tower burned. The man didn't. But there was a line in the report that snagged me. In the narrative section, where the incident commander wrote up the day-by-day, there was a sentence about Tower 8 that said, "Final transmission from Tower 8, logged at 0213 on day 2. Lookout subsequently confirmed evacuated." And that was all. It didn't say what the final transmission was. It just gave the time. 0213. The same time, to the minute, that the voice had checked in the night before. I sat with that for a long while. 2:13, the exact minute. I told myself coincidences happen, that the radio check the night before had simply fallen at that time by chance. But I'm a careful man, and careful men don't like a coincidence that lands that precisely. I was still sitting there when an older fellow stuck his head in. His name was Dwyer, and he was one of the district maintenance men, the ones who keep the roads and the gates and the radio repeaters running. He'd been around forever, longer than Reyes even, and he was the kind of guy who fixed his own trucks and didn't say much. He saw the Crow Ridge folder open on the table, and he stopped. "You reading about the fire?" he said. It wasn't really a question. I told him about the call. I figured he'd give me the same skip explanation everyone else had. He didn't. He came in and shut the door, which made the small hairs on my arms move, and he sat down across from me, and for a moment he just looked at the folder. Then he said, "You got the night call, Tower 8, 2:13. "How'd you know the time?" I said. "Because it's always 2:13, he said. "It's been 2:13 every time, going back years. Not every year, just some years. The dry years. The years with lightning. You'll get a call from 8, and it'll be 2:13, and it'll be a man's voice, calm as Sunday, giving a radio check." I asked him who it was. He was quiet a while. Then he said, "I'm going to tell you the one thing I tell everybody who gets the call, and then I'm going to let you decide what to do with it. If Tower 8 checks in after midnight, you log it, and you do not answer it. You hear me? You can talk to it during the day, on an inspection, in the daylight, fine. But after midnight, you do not key up and talk back to that voice. You let dispatch handle it however they handle it. You sit on your hands." "Why?" I said. And Dwyer looked at me, and his face was not the face of a man telling a campfire story. It was the face of a man who'd thought about this for years and never found the bottom of it. "Because it's not just checking in," he said. "It's looking for a relief. And you don't want to be the one who answers when it asks." He wouldn't say more than that. He told me to get a recording if I could, and he told me again, "Do not answer it after midnight." And then he got up and left, and I drove back up to my tower, in the last of the light, with all of it turning over in my head. For about a week, nothing happened. I logged my weather. I watched my sector. I took the morning check-ins. The dry lightning to the south fizzled out without giving us a fire. I started to think, maybe it really had been Skip, a one-off, a fluke of the night air. Then it called again. Same time, 2:13 in the morning. I was awake, because I'd been sleeping badly since the first call, lying on the bunk with the radio turned up. The squelch broke, and the calm voice came on. And this time, it didn't wait for a radio check. It just transmitted, the way a lookout does when he's got something to report. "Dispatch, Tower 8. I've got smoke, North Sector, down in the Beaver Creek drainage. Light gray, maybe a quarter-mile up from the creek. Recommend you roll a crew." I lay there frozen with my hand near the microphone. But I did not key up. I remembered what Dwyer said, but my whole body wanted to answer, because that's the training. That's 2 seasons of muscle memory. You hear a smoke report, you respond. I made myself lie still. Carla was on the desk again that night. She came back, careful. "Station identifying as Tower 8, dispatch. Be advised, there are no crews assigned to the North Sector, and the Beaver Creek Road is closed and gated. Can you confirm your location?" The voice came back, patient, almost kind. "Dispatch, Tower 8. I'm at my tower. I can see the smoke from here. It's in Beaver Creek, below the old Tower 8 ridge. You'll want to move on it before the wind comes up at dawn." And then the squelch closed, and it was gone again. Now here is the thing. Beaver Creek is in the drainage between my ridge and the old Tower 8 ridge. I can see part of it from my north windows in daylight. At night, it's just a black trough. I got up off the bunk and went to the north window and looked out, and at first there was nothing, just dark. And then I saw it. Way down in the bottom of the drainage, a faint orange glow. Not a campfire, bigger than that, but soft, diffuse, the way a smoke looks when it's lit from underneath by its own coals, and the light is filtering up through the gray. A holdover, maybe, finally waking up, exactly where the voice said. I keyed up. I couldn't help it. But I called dispatch, not the tower. "Dispatch, Tower 3. I've got a glow in the Beaver Creek drainage, north of my position. Can't get a clean bearing in the dark, but it's down low, near the creek," confirming the previous report. Carla came back fast. "Tower 3. Copy. Stand by." And then, a minute later, "Tower 3. Dispatch. We show no lightning strikes in that drainage, and no reported fire. Are you certain?" "I'm looking right at it," I said. She rolled a crew at first light. And here's the part that I keep coming back to. There was a fire there. A small one. A holdover from that lightning 2 weeks before that. Had crept underground in a root and come up in a snag down by the creek. The crew caught it small, maybe 1/10 of an acre, and put it out by noon. A good catch, an early catch, the kind of catch that's the whole point of the job. But no staffed tower had reported it. No lightning detection had flagged it. The only report of that fire came in at 2:13 in the morning, from a station calling itself Tower 8, from a ridge that had been closed for 6 years. That morning Carla called me on the office line when I came down for supplies, and she didn't sound flat anymore. She sounded tired and a little spooked, which I'd never heard from her. "I've been doing this 20 years, she said. "I want you to tell me honest. Did you make that first call? The Tower 8 call? Were you messing around?" "No," I said. "I swear to you I didn't." She was quiet. Then she said, "Because here's what's eating me." I went back to the recording. The console records everything, you know that. I went back to listen to the Tower 8 transmission, the smoke report, and it's on there. I heard it. Calm voice, the whole thing. Beaver Creek, the works. But when I went to flag it and save it as a clip, the audio for those 40 seconds was gone. Not erased, just not there. The recording runs right from my radio check straight to your confirmation, and the gap where Tower 8 talked it's like dead air. 40 seconds of nothing. But we all heard it. You heard it. I heard it, I said. "Then where'd it go?" she said. And I didn't have an answer for her. After that, the calls stopped being random and started feeling aimed. The voice began using terminology that nobody in the district used anymore. Old codes, old phrases. There's a way the old-timers used to report a fire's position. A grid system the district used back in the 70s and 80s, before they switched to the bearing and cross method, and the voice started using it. It would give positions by the old grid. Dispatch would have to look up what the old grid squares even meant. And every time, when they converted it, the position was right. And one night the voice named a road that wasn't on any map. It checked in, again at 2:13, and it reported a smoke. And it said, you can access it off the old Sumner cutoff, the spur that comes up the east side of the ridge. And dispatch came back and said there was no Sumner cutoff on any current map. And the voice said, patient as ever, it's there. It washed out the year before the fire. They took it off the maps, but the bed's still there. You can walk it. I asked Dwyer about that. Next time I was at the office, I asked him if there'd ever been a Sumner cutoff, and he went still, and then he said, yeah, there was. A spur road off the east side of the 8 Ridge, washed out, 7-8 years ago. We took it off the maps because it wasn't safe, and we didn't want anybody driving it. There's maybe 4 people alive who'd remember that road by that name. He looked at me, and none of them are sitting up at a burned tower at 2 in the morning. I want to be clear about how I was thinking through all of this, because I didn't jump to anything. Every time something happened, I tried to find the ordinary version first. Skip, old equipment, a prankster with knowledge of the district, a recording playing back somehow. But each explanation died the same way, by needing the impossible to be true. A prankster who knows the current wind, the old grid codes, a washed-out road's old name, the exact minute of a 6-year-old transmission, who can report a real fire before any detection system, and whose voice doesn't show up on the recording. There's no prankster like that. There's no equipment like that. So in late August, when Reyes scheduled a maintenance inspection up toward the old 8 Ridge, I asked to go along. We weren't going all the way to the tower site. The plan was to check the gate at the bottom of the closed Beaver Creek Road, look at a couple of culverts, and assess whether the road needed work, since the holdover fire had put a crew down in that drainage. Dwyer drove, Reyes rode shotgun, and I sat in the back of the truck with my map and my radio, feeling like a kid tagging along on something he shouldn't. The gate at the bottom of the closed road was the first thing. It was open. It's a heavy steel gate, painted that Forest Service brown, with a chain and a padlock. Dwyer keeps the keys, and it was standing open, the chain hanging loose, the lock open and clipped onto the chain, the way you'd leave it if you'd just driven through. Dwyer got out and looked at it for a long time, without saying anything. Then he said, quiet. I locked this gate myself in the spring. Nobody's got a key but me and the office. He picked up the lock and turned it over. It wasn't cut. It wasn't broken. It had been opened with a key. We drove through, and up the road, in the dust, there were tire tracks. Fresh ones. A single set, going up, an older tread pattern, wide, the kind you'd see on an old truck. And they went up the road ahead of us, and we followed them, and they held the road the whole way up, taking the curves, slowing for the rough spots, exactly the way a real truck, driven by a real person would. Dwyer kept looking at them in the dirt and shaking his head. We stopped at the second culvert to look at a washout, and while Reyes and Dwyer were down at the creek, I poked around the edge of the road, and I found the battery. It was an old radio battery, the big rectangular kind, that fit the handhelds the district used years ago, before everything got small and light. It was lying in the grass at the edge of the road, like somebody had set it down and forgotten it. I picked it up, and it was warm, not sun-warm. The grass around it was in shade. The morning was cool, and the battery was warm, the way a thing is warm when it's been working, when it's been holding a charge and running a radio. I held it and felt the warmth slowly going out of it into my hand, and I did not say anything to the others. I put it in my pack. I don't know why I hid it. I think I already knew that if I showed it to them, it would somehow not be warm anymore by the time they touched it, and I'd be the guy holding a cold old battery, saying it had been warm a second ago. We didn't go all the way to the tower that day. The road got too bad above the culvert, and Reyes called it. But before we turned around, we got out and walked up a stretch on foot, just to see, and there was ash on the trail. Now, there'd been a fire there 6 years ago, so ash isn't strange. But this ash was fresh. It was sitting on top of the road dust, in a thin scatter, and when the wind moved it, it lifted easy and light the way fresh ash does, and it smelled like smoke. Not old burn, not the dead mineral smell of a 6-year-old scar. It smelled like a campfire from last night. I knelt down and put my hand near it, and there was the faintest warmth coming off the ground in patches, like coals had been there not long before. Dwyer saw me do it. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the ridge above us, where you could see, through the dead snags, the black metal legs of the old tower against the sky. And then he said, "We're done here," and we walked back down to the truck. That night, I couldn't stand it anymore, and I went to find Dwyer at his place, a little house on the edge of town with 3 trucks in the yard, in various states of repair. He wasn't surprised to see me. He put coffee on, and we sat at his kitchen table, and I told him I needed the rest of it, the part of the story nobody would write down. He told me the official report on the Crow Ridge fire was changed. He said that in the original version, written in the days right after, there'd been a question about whether Hale, the Tower 8 lookout, had actually made it out. The service road down off the 8 ridge had been cut by the fire faster than anybody expected. A finger of flame ran across it and closed it, and for a stretch of time on day 2, nobody could confirm where Hale was. They assumed he'd gotten out ahead of it. They found his truck days later, down at the bottom, burned, which they took as proof he'd driven down and abandoned it when the road closed, and walked out. But nobody actually saw him walk out. Nobody at the bottom checked him in. He just at some point in the chaos got moved into the evacuated safe column, and the report got finalized that way, and the family was told he'd left the area afterward, that he'd quit, that he couldn't take the country anymore after nearly dying in it. There were people who didn't quite believe that, but there was no body, and a burned-over fire scar is a hard place to search, and the fire had been a big public thing, and nobody wanted the story of a lookout who burned in his tower. So the report said, evacuated, and that's what stood. And then Dwyer told me about the last transmission. He said the final radio call from Tower 8, the one logged at 2:13 on day 2, the one the report mentioned but didn't quote, he'd heard it. He'd been at the office that night, helping run logistics. He said Hale's voice had come over the net, and it was calm. Dwyer said, that was the thing that stuck with him. It was eerily calm, for a man with fire coming up his ridge. And Hale had said, "Dispatch, Tower 8. I can see all the towers from here." I asked Dwyer what that meant. He said, "That's what's haunted me for 6 years, because it was impossible. The smoke that night was a wall. You couldn't see 50 feet off that ridge. There was no way Hale could see one other tower, let alone all of them. The whole district was socked in with smoke." And he says, "Calm as anything. I can see all the towers from here." And then the radio went quiet, and that was the last anybody heard. And the next day, they found his truck burned at the bottom, and decided he'd walked out. We sat there a while. Then Dwyer said the thing that I've thought about every night since. He said, "I don't think the voice you're hearing is a recording, son. A recording doesn't know the wind. A recording doesn't catch a fire that hasn't happened yet. I think Hale's still up there. Not the way you mean, but up there. Still working the shift. Still watching for smoke. And I think the reason he can see all the towers, the reason he catches the fires before they start, is that wherever he's watching from, the fire never went out. He's still up there, in the middle of the Crow Ridge fire, and from in there, he can see everything. All of it. All the towers. All the smokes. Past and coming. And every so often, on a dry year, the channel between his shift and ours gets thin enough that he checks in, the way he always did, because he was a good lookout, and a good lookout checks in." I didn't answer that. I drove back up to my tower in the dark, and I'll tell you, the drive up that fire road had never felt so long. After that night, the calls changed again, and this is the part where it stopped being about a fire on the next ridge and started being about me. Tower 8 began checking in outside the schedule, not just at 2:13. It would key up at odd hours, late, and report things. And the things it reported started being about my tower. One night it checked in and said, "Dispatch, Tower 8. Be advised, Tower 3 is unmanned. No light, no response. Recommend you send someone up to check on the lookout." I was sitting in Tower 3 when it said that. I was right there, lights on, radio in my hand. I keyed up to dispatch, careful not to answer 8 directly, and said, "Dispatch, Tower 3 is manned and operational. Disregard that last." And Carla came back, shaken, and said, "Copy 3. We show you manned. Disregard." A few nights later, it reported smoke. "Dispatch, Tower 8. I've got smoke right behind Tower 3. Close. Within a few hundred yards of the structure. The lookout may not be able to see it from inside." I turned around in my chair and looked out every window. There was nothing. Black ridges, stars, my own dim reflection in the glass. No smoke, no glow, nothing. I told myself it was just the voice being wrong for once. Finally, a relief almost. And then I smelled it. Smoke, inside my tower. Faint, but real. That sharp, clean campfire smell. Right there in the room with me, where there was no fire, no propane lit, nothing burning. I got up and checked the burner, checked the wiring, checked outside on the catwalk. Nothing, no source. But the smell hung in the room for almost an hour, and I sat in the middle of it with my heart going, and the voice did not call again that night. Then it got into my logbook. I told you I keep a logbook, hardbound, my own small print. I write in it every shift. It's mine. It never leaves the tower. Nobody touches it but me. And one morning I opened it to log my weather, and there was an entry I had not written. It was in handwriting. Not mine. Older handwriting, slanted, careful, the kind of penmanship they don't teach anymore. And it was dated, with a time, 0213, and it said, Tower 8, relieved Tower 4, at 0213. All quiet. Relieved. That's the word for when one shift takes over from another. When you relieve a lookout, you take their place. You take over watching their sector. You carry their responsibility. Tower 8, relieved Tower 4. In my logbook. In handwriting that wasn't mine, that I would later realize, when I finally found a sample of it, matched Hale's hand from the old duty rosters almost exactly. I called Reyes about it. I drove down and showed him the logbook, the strange entry. And to his credit, he didn't tell me I'd written it in my sleep, though I could see he wanted to. He looked at it a long time. Then he said, quietly, Tower 4 checked in fine this morning. There's a man up there. He's alive and well, and he answered his radio. I know, I said. Then what does it mean? Reyes said. Tower 8 relieved Tower 4. And neither of us said the thing we were both thinking, which was that maybe it didn't mean Tower 4 was gone. Maybe it meant Tower 4 was next. That Tower 8 was working its way down the list, relieving them one at a time. In early September, we put together a small team to go all the way up to the 8 Ridge in daylight. Reyes wanted eyes on the actual tower site. I think, honestly, he wanted to be able to write a report that said there was nothing up there, so he could close the whole thing in his own mind. There were 4 of us, Reyes, Dwyer, me, and a young seasonal named Pratt, who'd been pulled in to help, and who didn't know the history, and kept making jokes until about the halfway point, when he stopped. He stopped because the GPS failed. We were navigating up the old road with a handheld GPS unit, and somewhere above the second culvert, on a stretch where the road got faint, the unit started giving us a position that didn't make sense. It put us about 2 miles east of where we actually were, out in a drainage we could plainly see we were not in. Dwyer's unit did the same thing. 2 units, same wrong position. And when Reyes pulled out the paper map to navigate the old way, the map showed a service road that none of us had ever seen. A spur, coming up the east side of the ridge, drawn in the same ink as everything else, like it had always been there. Reyes ran his thumb over it and said, "Slow. That's the Sumner cutoff. That's been off the maps for 8 years. But there it was, on a current map, printed." The radio started going strange too. Our contact with dispatch got distorted, words breaking up, Carla's voice coming through like she was very far away and underwater. And in the gaps, in the static, we started to hear another voice, calm, even, giving directions. "Take the next spur to your right. The road forks ahead. Stay left at the fork. You're almost to the top." It was Tower 8, and the directions were specific and confident. The voice of a man who knew that country in his bones. And the awful thing, the thing that made Pratt go quiet, was that the directions were almost right. There was a spur to the right. There was a fork ahead. The voice knew where we were, better than our own equipment did. But Dwyer, who had driven that road for 30 years, stopped the truck at the fork and looked at where the voice was telling us to go, the left fork, and he said, "No, that's wrong. The left fork goes out onto the east face. The tower's up the right. He's trying to take us out onto the cutoff." The voice came again, patient, certain. "Stay left at the fork. The right fork is washed out. Stay left." And Dwyer, God bless him, said out loud to the radio, the only time I ever saw him answer it, "Not today, Hale." And he took the right fork. The right fork was fine. It was not washed out. It took us up toward the top, the way Dwyer knew it would. The left fork, the one the voice wanted, ran out onto the steep east face above a long drop, the old Sumner cutoff bed, the road that wasn't safe, the road they'd taken off the maps. If we'd followed the calm, helpful, accurate-sounding voice, it would have put 4 of us out on a washed-out shelf, above a cliff in a truck. That's when I understood what Dwyer meant about not answering. The voice isn't lying to hurt you. That would almost be easier. The voice is helping. It is doing exactly what a good lookout does, guiding people through the country, watching out for them. And it is wrong in a way you can only catch if you know the ground better than the voice wants you to. It is gently, calmly, helpfully trying to relieve you of your shift. We got near the top, and as we came up the last stretch, Pratt, the young one, was looking up at the ridge through the windshield, and he said, "Wait, I thought you guys said the tower burned down." And we all looked. For just a second, up on the ridge against the sky, there was a tower, a whole one, the cab, the stairs, the catwalk, everything, standing complete and solid, the way it must have stood for 40 years before the fire. I saw it. We all saw it. It was right there. Then there was a flash. A dry lightning strike hit somewhere off to the north. A hard white flash with the thunder a few seconds behind it. And in the flash, the tower was gone. There was nothing on the ridge but the black metal legs and the concrete pad and the dead snags, the way there'd been nothing for 6 years. We drove the last bit up to the site and got out, and it was just wreckage. Exactly what the record said. Twisted metal. A melted puddle of what had been the radio gear. The concrete pad cracked from the heat, except for the boot prints. Around the old foundation, in the ash and dust, there were boot prints, fresh ones. They circled the pad, the way a lookout paces his catwalk on a long shift, round and round, the same path worn into the dust. One man's prints, going around and around the place where the tower used to stand, watching a horizon that wasn't there anymore. Dwyer crouched down by them and looked at them for a long time, and then he stood up and took off his hat, which I had never seen him do, and he didn't say anything, and we all just stood there in the wind, on that burned ridge with the boot prints going round and round. I found Hale's name in the old records after that, the full thing, and I found his last log. His final season's logbook had survived because it had been down at the office for review, not up in the tower, when the fire came. It was in the archive, and Owen pulled it for me. I read it at the file room table. Most of it was ordinary lookout stuff, weather and smoke checks and the small loneliness of the job leaking through in the margins the way it does for all of us. But in the last couple of weeks before the fire, the entries changed. Hale started writing about fires before they happened. There'd be an entry, dated, that said something like, "Smoke will come up in the lodgepole drainage in 2 days. Southwest corner. Watch for it." And then, 2 days later, an entry that just said, "Lodgepole smoke, southwest corner, as expected." Over and over. He was calling fires before there was any fire to call. At first I thought it was a man going strange in the isolation, the way it sometimes happens, the country getting into your head. But then I cross-checked the dates against the fire records, and the fires he predicted, they happened. Small ones, mostly, holdovers, and single tree strikes, the kind of thing a sharp lookout might anticipate from the weather. But he got them right, days early, every time. And the last full entry, 2 days before the Crow Ridge fire started, said, "Big one coming. It'll start on the ridge to the north, and it'll run south through all of it. I can already see it. I've been able to see it for a while now. From a certain angle, up here at night, you can see all of it, everything that's going to burn. It's strange. Once you've seen it, you can't stop seeing it. I think I'm going to have a long shift." I sat in that file room, and I read that line. I think I'm going to have a long shift. And I thought about the boot prints going round and round the burned foundation. 6 years of long shift. And I had to go outside and stand in the parking lot for a while. I think Dwyer was close to right, and I'll tell you what I've come to, though I want to be careful not to pretend I understand it, because I don't, not really. I think there's a way of watching that country, on certain nights, from that certain ridge, where the lookout stops seeing just the present and starts seeing the fire whole, all of it, the fires that burned and the fires that haven't burned yet, all laid out at once, like smoke you can read. I think Hale found that way of seeing in his last season. I think it's why he was so calm when the fire came up his ridge, because from where he was watching, the fire was already old news, already part of the picture, and he was just watching it happen, the way you watch a thing you've already seen. I can see all the towers from here. He wasn't seeing through the smoke. He was seeing from somewhere the smoke doesn't block. Somewhere the Crow Ridge fire is always burning, and always about to burn. And from in there, you can see everything. And he never left. He just keeps watching. He keeps the shift. And every so often, on a dry year, when a fire is coming, he checks in, because that's the job. That's what a good lookout does. He warns the others. He's still trying to do the work. He's still trying to catch the smoke early and save somebody a bad week. The last night, the real last night of all this, was the night of the big dry storm. A dry lightning storm came through the district in the second week of September, the kind that's every lookout's nightmare. Strike after strike with no rain to follow, each one a possible fire. We were all up, all the towers, watching, logging strikes, calling them in by bearing. It was a long, electric night, the sky flashing white over the black ridges, the thunder rolling down the drainages. Everybody was on edge and on the radio and busy. And at 2:13, in the middle of it, Tower 8 checked in. Dispatch, Tower 8, be advised, you're going to get a start in Tower 3's sector, southwest face, below the rock band, in the timber. It'll come up within the hour. The lookout needs to be watching the southwest face, not the strikes. The fire's already there. It just hasn't shown yet. And dispatch, busy, swamped with real strikes to log, came back and said, Station, identifying as Tower 8. Dispatch is busy with confirmed strikes. Disregard. Carla didn't have time for a ghost that night. She had a dozen real fires possibly starting. But I was Tower 3, and it was my sector, and the voice had never once been wrong. I turned my chair to the southwest face, below the rock band, in the timber. There'd been a strike there, maybe 20 minutes earlier. I'd logged it, a single hard hit, but there'd been no smoke. And in a storm like that, you log the strike and move on, because you can't chase everyone. I stared at that dark face, and I saw nothing, just black timber and the flashes of the storm. And I had a choice to make, and it's the choice this whole thing comes down to. The voice was impossible. The voice came from a man who burned 6 years ago. The voice had tried to drive a truck full of us off a cliff. Every rule and every reasonable thought said disregard, the way dispatch had. But the voice had caught the Beaver Creek holdover when no system did. The voice had never been wrong about a fire, and it was my sector. And if there was a start down there and I sat on my hands, it could run uphill in that wind, and there were summer cabins on the far side of that ridge. So I keyed up dispatch, and I didn't say anything about Tower 8. I just said, "Dispatch Tower 3. I'm calling a probable start, southwest face below the rock band, in the timber. No visible smoke yet, but I had a strike there 20 minutes ago, and I don't like it. Recommend you stage a crew at the bottom of my road, ready to roll at first light or sooner." I made it my own call. I took the voice's warning, and I put my own name on it. Because that I could defend. That was procedure. A lookout calling a probable from a strike. Carla copied it and staged a crew, half because she trusted me, and half, I think, because somewhere in her, she was scared of that 213 voice too. The smoke came up 40 minutes later, right where the voice said, below the rock band, in the timber, on the southwest face. By the time it showed, the crew was already staged at the bottom of my road, and they were on it within the hour, and they caught it at under an acre, on a night when a late catch would have let it run all the way up to those cabins. It was, by any measure, a good catch, a great catch. The district fire report the next week called it a model early response. And here is the last thing, the thing that I think about more than any other, the thing that made me finally write all this down. When the formal report was written up, and the radio logs were pulled and transcribed to document the timeline of that catch, the warning, the original warning, the one that said, "Watch the southwest face, the fire's already there," was in the log. But it wasn't attributed to Tower 8. The transcribed log showed that warning, coming from Tower 3, from me, at 2:13 a.m. The console recording, when they pulled it, had my voice giving that warning. Calm, even, word for word what Tower 8 had said. "Watch the southwest face. The fire's already there. It just hasn't shown yet." I never said those words. I said probable start. No visible smoke yet. I don't like it. I have it in my own logbook, in my own hand. But the official record, the recording, the transcript, all of it, shows me saying Hale's words at Hale's time. The record fixed itself. It smoothed the impossible thing out by making the impossible voice into mine. And nobody questioned it, because it was a good catch, and good catches don't get investigated. The case, as far as the district is concerned, is closed. Tower 3 caught a fire on a stormy night. Model response. File it and move on. I went back up to the 8 Ridge one more time, alone, at the end of the season, the day before I came down for the winter. I told myself I was just going to look. I drove up to the gate, which was locked again, the way it should be, and I walked the rest, the long way up, and I stood at the burned foundation in the cold autumn light. The boot prints were still there, going round and round, and there was something new on the cracked concrete pad, sitting in the middle of it where the firefinder used to be. A single page, a lookout log page, the printed kind we use, with the columns for time and weather and observations. It was fresh, clean, white, not weathered, sitting flat on the burned concrete with a small rock holding it down against the wind, the way you'd weight a page so it wouldn't blow away while you wrote. The top of the page had the tower designation filled in that careful old slanted hand. It said Tower 8, and the date was next season's date, a date that hadn't happened yet. And under lookout, in the same hand, there was a name. It was my name. The columns below were blank, the whole shift empty, waiting to be filled in. A clean page for next year, Tower 8, my name on it, ready for me to start logging. I left it there. I put the rock back on it, and I walked down off that ridge, and I drove home, and I did not tell anyone, and I am not going back next season. I've told the district I'm done, that 2 seasons was enough, that I'm going to find some work that lets me sleep at night. They were sorry to hear it. I was a good lookout, they said. One of the best young ones they'd had. Real instinct for it. A real eye for smoke before it shows. I don't know what's up on that ridge. I don't think it wants to hurt me. Exactly. I think it's lonely. And I think it's been working a very long shift. And I think it found, in me, somebody who understood the job. Somebody careful. Somebody who writes everything down. Somebody who would eventually trust the call. I think Hale has been watching all the towers from in there for 6 years. And I think he saw me the way he saw the fires. Early. Before I showed. And I think he wrote my name on that page. Because from where he's standing, the shift change has already happened. It's already in the record. The way my voice is already on that recording saying his words. So I won't be going back. But I'll tell you the thing that keeps me up. Down here, where it's safe, and there are no towers, and no radios, and no dry ridges flashing under the lightning. It checks in when a fire is coming. That's the pattern. Dry year, lightning, a fire on the way, and at 2:13 in the morning, calm as Sunday, Tower 8 checks in to warn the others. And there's going to be another dry year. There's always another dry year. And one of these nights, somewhere, on some district radio, on a channel that should be quiet, a lookout who has never heard any of this is going to be sitting up in a glass room in the dark, watching for smoke, and the squelch is going to break, and a calm, familiar, patient voice is going to ask if anybody copies. If you ever sit that shift, and that call comes, log it. Write down every word, in your own hand, in a book that's yours. But when it asks for someone to relieve the shift, when it tells you it's tired, when it asks you, calm and kind and so reasonable, to take over watching from up there, where you can finally see all of it, every fire that ever burned, and every one that's coming, all of it laid out at once, beautiful, and clear, and endless. Don't say you copy. Just let the channel go quiet, and watch your own sector, and wait for the daylight. That's all I've got. The case isn't closed. It just has my name on the next page.